Numeric information can come to you in a variety of forms. On this worksheet called Numeric, we've got 4 different kinds of numbers in columns B, C, D, and E. Now, in Excel, every cell initially has a format called General. If the Home tab is active and you click a cell, you're likely to see the word General there. Click over in column A, that's the case. Column B, column C, we keep seeing this word. If I click on one of the entries in column D, it says Custom. That might throw us at first. But over in column E, that's General too. But we need to change formats. Column E might be a starting point here. Now, often in lists, we can simply click the column itself. That selects all the cells within the column. And a likely choice here might be $sign. I'll click it. Looks very much like the column to the left. If we make this column wider, I'll point to the boundary between column E and F, click and drag to the right. Notice how the $sign stays on the left-hand side, and that might be what you want. If you prefer not to have the $signs, maybe saying that the heading itself suggests that anyway, you might consider the alternative here, which is comma. Now, many times this so-called comma style is what we want to use instead of this $sign, which really is called a counting number format. The obvious difference, and the only difference really, is the absence of a $sign. I'll click comma. Same kind of display, but no $sign. So that could be your choice. If all these numbers are showing decimals, but everything's 0 to the right of the decimal, why not use this other button that we see here called Decrease Decimal? Now, it is important to note these are formatting changes. I'm going to make one simple change here and change this to be 974.51. I'm going to change the entire column to decrease the decimals. This does not change content, but it will change appearance in this case. It says 975. The real value is 974.51. So you want to be careful with these. Of course, it would make sense here to not show these decimals, but at the same time, we haven't truly rounded the result. So be alert to that idea. But the main thrust here is about display and how we want this information to look. There's another way to get to the $sign here. This was achieved by simply pressing that button. But when you want to go behind the scenes, just as you might have seen in an earlier movie, for additional font buttons, we went to that arrow in the lower right-hand corner. Here in the number group, we can go to that lower right-hand corner. And tons of choices in here. And here's one called Currency, which you would think would be what's in effect in column D, but no, this is going to be a little bit different. I'll click OK. Notice how the $sign now, even when we make the column wider, is right next to the number. Now it's up to you to decide, do you prefer that or do you prefer this choice here? I think a lot of people gravitate toward this because it's available and easily accessible on the Home tab. So at different times, you have to make a decision about how you want these numbers being displayed. Here too, we probably don't want the decimal places, decrease them. But think out some of those choices. Now, although not as widely used, occasionally you might be using phone numbers, social security numbers. Do not type the additional characters. Take advantage of a built-in feature in Excel. Now, you probably would do this either before putting in the first phone number or maybe after putting in the first one. But if we simply, in column C here, either go to this button or perhaps faster, Control 1. That takes us into this Format Cells dialog box. Now, it doesn't automatically go to the Number tab. It did here because I've been using it recently. And the choice here, you wouldn't find it at first, but it's under Special and Phone Number. Click OK, and you'll have to make the column wider. We can either double-click the boundary between C and D or click and drag that way. We see what happens. So anytime you type the numbers from now on, you just type the numbers. Of course, you did that before too. But if we want to make a change here, if it's a completely new number, just type the new number. You don't type the parentheses, space, or dash. And Social Security number, by the way, these are all fake. They all end in quadruple 0 there. Same idea, same location. Control 1 is the fast way to get there. Special, Social Security number, OK. And there too, if you're typing these or making changes, you don't type the dashes. So we've seen just a few of the numeric formats available in Excel. A simple thought that occurs to us as we work with not only Excel, but also Word, PowerPoint, and other software packages is this idea of, I will not repeat or retype something that's already there. We often will copy data, copy information. As we look at this worksheet called Move, Copy, Insert, we might want to make a copy of this data using some different numbers, so possibly we'll highlight this portion of it. And if you have worked with other software, you're familiar with the two-step process of copy and paste, and if you're moving it, cut and paste. If I want this to also appear down in row 20, instead of copying it and pasting it, which certainly isn't wrong, I can point to any edge here and drag it. If I hold down the Control key as I do this, a tiny little plus is accompanying the arrow. As we start to drag down a little bit here, automatic scrolling occurs. Get right to this location, I'll release the left mouse button, then the key. We simply made a copy of the data. And of course, at other times, instead of doing that, I'll press Control Z, we simply want to move data. Now, it's less likely to move it in this particular worksheet here, but with the data highlighted, point to any edge, drag it down, put it there. Could have dragged it right, although that would disrupt the headings, but you can easily move data unless you're moving at a few hundred rows, for example. So the two-step process, although widely used and it works fine, it's often a lot easier simply to drag data, drag it from any edge once it's highlighted. And again, if I wanted a copy of all this, I can point to any edge, say the right edge, hold down the Control key, drag it down here, let go of the mouse first, and there's a copy of it. There also could be times too when you want to insert data. Not so well known is a drag along with the Shift key. Now, as you look at this data here, sales, expenses, profits, down here we're analyzing the percent of sales change, but for some reason, profits here is appearing before expenses. It should be the other way around. So one approach could be we could insert new cells right here. Imagine a bunch of empty cells above this and then move the data below it up. But it's going to be a lot simpler to simply, for example, highlight just these cells here. And with the Shift key held down, we can drag this upward, let go of the mouse first, and we simply have moved and inserted. And you can do that with columnar data as well too. Entire rows, entire columns, or just cells within rows or columns. So as it turns out in this list here, which is going to be expanded, and I'll be copying data from other sources too, I want the department to be to the left of the building column. Or phrased another way, I want building to be to the right of department. Makes no difference. We'll simply click the entire column letter. And I can drag any edge here, but I'll point to the left edge, hold down the Shift key, drag leftward using the left mouse button right to here, release the mouse first, and we simply moved and inserted the data. You want to have that increasing feeling that you're in control and you've got tools here to move data around in sensible ways, either copying data, moving data, or when necessary, moving and inserting data. Excel has all the tools for redesigning worksheets without heavy command usage. And in these techniques here, we didn't use any of the commands that we could have used possibly off of the Home tab. These were all dragging techniques and easily achieved by using either the Control key or the Shift key as we saw in those two examples, or in case of move, a simple drag. When you're looking for data within a list, sometimes it will be helpful to use a feature found on the Home tab off to the right called Find and Select. At other times, you might consider using Excel's filter, and that's covered in a later movie in this course. Find and Select. And before using this, consider where you're trying to look. That'll shorten the time it takes to find information. If I'm looking for somebody named Rick, and that's not his last name, if it were the last name, I'd simply sort this data based on what's in column A and scroll to that part of the alphabet. But I'm looking for a certain Rick, I'm not sure which one it is. I'll click column A, and then go to that icon on the Home tab, Find and Select. Find. So we're looking for Rick here. Now, for the moment, I don't care if it's upper or lowercase. That should work okay. We'll simply try and find all. And it jumps to the first one. There's Rick Combs, row 298. But here's a list right here, and we might be surprised at first because R-I-C-K, even when it's embedded in other words, like in Erickson and in Strickland, we found that too. But the list here is sufficiently short. We probably found the one that we want here. Now, there's an Options button here, and depending upon who might have been using your computer or this feature most recently, possibly the Options button has been clicked, and we've got some additional choices here too. Sometimes we're looking for data that's only within the entire cell. In other words, there's nothing else there. So switching gears a bit here, let's scroll back up top. Imagine if we're looking for people who only have the medical benefits. That's the letter M by itself. So selecting column H, find and select. And Excel remembers what we had done previously, but this time we're using M. Match entire cell contents. If we're looking only for those entries where M is present but no other letters are, we'll choose match entire contents. Let's find all. It says we found 62 of them. Now, if we didn't check the box, I'll uncheck it now, click back on column H and find all again. Now we've got 296 of them. So always be alert to this. And when you come to this dialog box, remember, it isn't always expanded. So click the options box. Also, Excel remembers previous searches, so sometimes you don't remember or you wouldn't have known what occurred earlier. So I recommend always checking this and just make sure some of these boxes here that you wouldn't want checked are cleared. Now, sometimes you want to replace data. Let's imagine this scenario where this company is saying, you know, we've got some people that are half-time, but some people are 0.4 time, others are 0.6. We want this to be part-time. So every time we see the word half here, we want to replace that with the word part. So we'll select column D, find and select, and this time replace. And we don't want to find the letter M, we're looking for half. And every time we see half, we want to replace it with part. And we certainly don't want to match entire cell contents. The word half never appears by itself. And we'll simply do a replace all, and Excel will tell us how many times that occurred. All done, we made 118 replacements. And you can see there over in rows 7 and 8, we see part-time, and certainly others as well too. So it's an easy to use feature, and it always works a bit more smoothly if you narrow down the search. And always be alert to the idea that when you come to this dialog box, it might or might not be expanded. That's why we have the options button here. And because Excel remembers previous choices here, I recommend always expanding this to see if there are any, because sometimes you get some really strange results if you didn't know what was happening here. So I think you can see it's a powerful tool using this feature for finding data, or in a more expansive way, replacing data.